Okay, so if you will look at these notes, we kind of talked briefly about them right before we read A Rose for Emily, but there's some things that I want to review and some things that I would like to kind of highlight and add. William Faulkner, here's his picture, high school and college dropout, nickname count, no count, born and raised in Mississippi. This is hugely important because he actually employs a lot of his upbringing and what he knows about Mississippi in his writing, and his works are set in Mississippi. I also want you guys to recognize that even though he was a high school and college dropout, he is pretty much a literary genius, all right? And I think that when students always ask me, does the writer intend to do these things, that when we read As I Lay Dying, that it is one of the most perfect examples of, yes, he did do these things intentionally. He did make a lot of stylistic choices and include a lot of different allusions and things intentionally. All right. This is just a quote about his style and about what he chooses to incorporate. Yoknapatawpha County is the fictional county he explored in his writing. Okay, and it's mentioned by name in several of his works, and it's not mentioned by name in others. All right. He experimented with repetition, multiple viewpoints, and stream of consciousness. All right, and he has a non-linear narrative in many of his works as well. You're going to see this non-linear narrative in As I Lay Dying, and you saw it in A Rose for Emily as well. The activity that we did where you put things in chronological order, that was just to kind of demonstrate how difficult it is to put his work into some sort of an order because of his non-linear narrative. Okay, so the time period of As I Lay Dying is right here. All right, it is the Depression era. We have other things that you have studied in history that have been going on, the New Deal. We still are looking at a lot of persistent racism. We have the Dust Bowl going on out west, and we also are on the brink of World War II and the Cold War. That's coming up. All right, so we have had World War I. All right. Jot that down. That does play a role in the novel. It is not mentioned directly, but it does play a role. All right, so have you guys ever seen this picture, Migrant Mother? Okay, it's super famous. It is a photograph by Dorothea Lange, and Dorothea Lange was employed by the Works Progress Administration, which was under the New Deal, which was organized to give out-of-work photographers and like musicians and things like that, people like that, jobs because they were not able to support themselves during the Depression. So her job was to go and to kind of take pictures and, write about what was going on in a lot of these, towns and areas where people were, having to migrate in order to find work. All right, and so she came across this family, and here's some commentary. I'm going to read to you. The photograph that has become known as Migrant Mother is one of a series of photographs that Dorothea Lange made of Florence Owens Thompson and her children in February or March of 1936 in Nipomo, California. Lange was concluding a month's trip photographing migratory farm labor around the state for what was then the Resettlement Administration. In 1960, she gave this account of the experience. I saw and approached the hungry and desperate mother as if drawn by a magnet. I do not remember how I explained my presence or my camera to her, but I do remember she asked me no questions. I made 5 exposures, working closer and closer from the same direction. I did not ask her name or her history. She told me her age, that she was 32. She said that they had been living on frozen vegetables from the surrounding fields and birds that the children killed. She had just sold the tires from her car to buy food. There she sat in that lean-to tent with her children huddled around her and seemed to know that my pictures might help her, and so she helped me. There was a sort of equality about it. All right, so when we look at this commentary and you look at this image, the reason that I have included this, not only is this to expose you to this very famous photograph and the background surrounding it, but also because to me, when I visualize the family in this novel, the Bundren family, I think about this image because this is very much the time period and very similar to the situation. Extremely poor, extreme poverty is what we're looking at, okay? And Migrant Mother, they're experiencing the same thing. I mean, she sold the tires from her car. They're eating frozen peas that the children are finding in fields. Like they have nothing. All right. Two very important terms that I want to bring to your attention. The first is stream of consciousness. And let me say this about stream of consciousness. If your teacher has ever said, take out a piece of paper and write everything that comes to mind, we're doing a stream of consciousness activity, that is not stream of consciousness. That is free writing. All right? So if you've ever done that, that is free writing. That is not stream of consciousness. Stream of consciousness is much more difficult. It goes much deeper. And what it is as you sit here, you're listening to me, and you can hear my voice, right? All right? But at the same time, you are maybe taking some notes, maybe writing something down, maybe thinking of several other things, right? Like you're not just sitting there hearing my voice. There's other things that are going on in your brain, okay? Stream of consciousness is an author's deliberate tracking of all of those things that are going on in your brain and trying to put them down on paper, okay? So all of those things that are happening, even before you would form words to explain what's going on in your mind, the author is writing those things down. So it's like the innermost workings of a character and a character's psyche, okay? So we will see some dialogue because you hear me talking, right? So that's dialogue. You will see some of that. But a lot of it are these things that are happening in these characters' minds. And we don't think in sentences and paragraphs very often. So it's not going to be written exactly like that because that's not how we think. And that's what the author is trying to get down on paper. Does that make sense to you guys? All right, that's why it's difficult to read. Another term is Southern Gothic. All right, and you saw a lot of Southern Gothic in A Rose for Emily. You know, I mean, she's sleeping with a dead man. That's pretty creepy. And Southern Gothic doesn't use your traditional stereotypes or your traditional archetypes in terms of characters. Do y'all know what an archetype is? Do you? It's like a story pattern or a character pattern. All right. And so these are some of those traditional kind of stereotypes or archetypes, like, you know, the damsel in distress, you know, the girl or the princess who needs rescuing. You're not going to see these types of characters in Southern Gothic writing, all right? Whereas Emily could be considered like the demure Southern belle, she's not because she's creepy. You know what I'm saying? So we got that creepy, you know, we find out she's been sleeping with a dead man for 40 years factor in here, and that's Southern Gothic. When you read it, elements of it make you go, ooh, that's kind of cognitive dissonance, that discomfort. All right? Southern Gothic continued, it employs the grotesque, you know, sleeping next to a dead man's body. That's pretty grotesque. All right? So, As I Lay Dying is told in stream of consciousness fashion by 15 different speakers. All right? That is why I have given you this chart. It is very difficult to keep up with the different characters. Okay? So, as we go, we're going to write down some information about them on the chart. All right? Some hallmarks of Faulkner's technique. He shifts narration from one character to another. Stream of consciousness, disruptions in chronology. He allows the reader to have to put the story in order. You have to figure it out. It's like putting a puzzle together. Every year when I teach this book, and I have taught it for probably 7 or 8 years, not consistently because sometimes I break it up and do other things, but I find another thing that I have missed previously. Like I find another nugget or another clue. And it's really fascinating because you're putting together this puzzle. Now I'm going to say if I were looking for something that I wanted to read for pleasure, I would not pick this up. Okay? But as far as something to teach, it's one of the best things that I can teach you about, guys, because it is going to help you with your reading comprehension. All right? You're going to learn a lot from reading this book. So I love to teach it. I don't love the story. Cool? All right. So this is a novel. Our genre is that it's a satire of the heroic narrative. It's a rural novel. It's also a comedy and a tragedy. And it's Southern Gothic. So we have multiple levels of genre here. Y'all know what genres are, right? A division of literature. Okay? Yep. You know the two main genres are poetry and prose. Right? Those are the top. Well, after poetry and prose, you take prose into fiction and nonfiction. And then you go down. There's hundreds of genres. Okay? Our tone varies from narrator to narrator. Some of them are tragic. Some are comic, calm, hysterical, emotional, detached. Our setting is the 1920s in the fictional Yoknapatawpha County, Mississippi. Okay, so this is post what? World War I. All right. This is not the it's actually the 1930s. This is not like the Roaring 20s, okay? Our major conflict, the members of the Bundren family are trekking across the Mississippi countryside to bury Addie, their wife and mother. And the source of the title here is Agamemnon's speech to Odysseus in the Odyssey. As I lay dying, the woman with the dog's eyes would not close my eyes for me as I descended into Hades. Okay? So, this is very important, and we are going to go back to this several times as we're reading the novel, and we are going to talk about how we see this as this journey, this hero journey. Have any of you seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? All right, that is also kind of a parallel to the Odyssey, where they're taking this journey and they're running into a lot of obstacles along the way. We're going to see that we're running into a lot of the same obstacles that Odysseus ran into when he was trying to get home. Y'all read the Odyssey in the 9th grade, didn't you? Okay. All right. This right here is one of the most valuable pieces of information that I can provide for you in reading this novel. This is the family tree, the Bundren family tree. All right. So we have this father at the very top of this family tree, and we don't know, like, really his name or anything. We just know he's the father. And he has a daughter, and his daughter is Addie, and she is the one, the matriarch, or the mother, and they are traveling with her to bury her. Okay, they're traveling with her body to bury her. She married a man named Ans. This is her husband, okay? So she's the mother, he is the father. Somewhere along the line, and I'm going to go ahead and give this away to you, she had a dotted line relationship, if you know what I mean, with a man named Reverend Whitfield, and had a child named Jewel. She and Ans had these children. Cash, Darrell, a boy, Dewey Dell, girl. She had a dotted line relationship with Laugh, if you know what I mean, and Vardaman.